The autumn wind rustled through the trees as Alex finished up another intense basketball practice at Richmond High. His muscles were tired, but there was a slight smile on his face. The team was getting better every day, preparing for the upcoming state championships. The 17-year-old team captain had led the evening's practice session, showing the younger players some new defensive moves he'd been perfecting. As he walked down the familiar streets of his neighborhood, streetlights flickering to life in the early evening, his stomach growled loudly. The nearby McDonald's golden arches caught his eye, their warm glow inviting after the long practice. It was his usual spot, convenient, affordable, and the staff always greeted him with friendly smiles since he'd been coming there since freshman year. The door chimed as he pushed it open, the warm air inside a welcome change from the cool evening breeze. The familiar smell of French fries and grilled burgers filled the air. Mrs. Chen, a regular customer who taught at the local elementary school, waved at him from her usual corner spot. Her young daughter was working on homework while munching on chicken nuggets. "Hey Alex, the usual?" called out Mike from behind the counter. The elderly cashier had watched Alex grow up over the years, from a shy freshman to the confident high school senior he was now. Alex nodded, adjusting the strap of his gym bag. "You know it, Mr. Mike. Double cheeseburger meal, extra pickles." The restaurant had its usual evening crowd, a mix of families grabbing dinner, college students hunched over their laptops, and workers stopping by after their shifts. The mundane scene was oddly comforting, like a small snapshot of community life. Some kids from the local middle school were giggling in one booth, their backpacks piled high beside them. A couple of elderly men were engaged in their daily chess match by the window, barely looking up from their intense game. While waiting for his order, Alex pulled out his phone to check his homework schedule. He had a big chemistry test tomorrow, and coach had been clear, maintaining good grades was just as important as scoring points on the court. His mom had always taught him that education came first, and he took that seriously. The acceptance letter from State University sitting proudly on their fridge was proof that her wisdom had paid off. The basketball team photo from last season caught his eye as he scrolled through his gallery. There he was with his teammates, all sweaty but grinning after winning the regional finals. The photo brought back good memories, the hard work, the celebration, the pride in his parents' eyes. His dad had framed that picture and put it up in his auto repair shop, telling everyone who'd listen about his son's achievements. Order number 47, called out Jenny, the young server who'd just started working there last month. Alex stood up, reaching for his wallet. The ordinary evening was about to take an unexpected turn, though none of the people enjoying their peaceful dinner could have predicted what was about to unfold. The regular customers, the chess players, the studying kids, all would soon become witnesses to an incident that would shake their community and spark important conversations about prejudice and justice. But for now, it was just another evening at McDonald's. Alex was just another teenager grabbing dinner after practice, thinking about homework, basketball, and his future dreams. The safety and normalcy of the moment made what was about to happen even more shocking. The security camera in the corner silently recorded the scene, capturing these last few minutes of ordinary life before everything changed. The evening news played quietly on the TV mounted in the corner, mixing with the soft music from the restaurant speakers and the gentle murmur of conversations. Outside, cars passed by on the main street, their headlights casting moving shadows through the restaurant windows. It was the kind of ordinary moment that usually gets forgotten, unless something extraordinary happens to make it memorable. Just 3 blocks away from the McDonald's, the evening shift at the local police station was getting complicated. The dispatch radio crackled with static before a voice cut through. "Dispatch to any available units. We've received reports of a disturbance at Riley's Burger Shop on Oak Street. Suspect described as a young male in athletic wear, approximately 17 to 18 years old, carrying a gym bag." Officers Wilson and Rodriguez were finishing up their coffee break when the call came in. They'd been partners for just 6 months, both relatively new to the force. Wilson, fresh out of the police academy, was still eager to prove himself, while Rodriguez had transferred from another district, bringing 3 years of experience with her. Unit 247 responding, Rodriguez radioed back, already heading toward their patrol car. The night had been quiet until now, filled with routine traffic stops and a minor fender bender. But something about this call felt different. The dispatcher's voice had carried an urgency that made both officers tense up. As they drove through the familiar streets of their beat, more details came through the radio. The suspect had allegedly gotten into an argument with staff at Riley's, knocking over a display before running off. The description was vague, too vague, as Rodriguez would later reflect in her incident report. But in the moment, adrenaline and assumptions filled in the gaps that should have raised red flags. Their patrol car cruised past Riley's burger shop, where everything seemed calm now. The manager stood outside, talking to another officer who'd arrived first. He pointed down the street toward the direction of McDonald's. "Think I saw someone matching that description heading that way," he said, his words carrying more weight than they should have. The golden arches of McDonald's glowed in the distance. Through the windows, they could see the usual evening crowd. Wilson spotted Alex immediately, young, athletic build, gym bag beside him. In that moment, what should have been a routine verification turned into something else entirely. The officers didn't notice the friendly waves Alex got from other customers or the easy conversation he had with the staff. They didn't see the honor roll student, the team captain, the kid who helped elderly Mrs. Chen carry her groceries every Sunday. Instead, they saw what they were primed to see, a suspect matching a vague description. Rodriguez parked the car, her experienced instincts telling her something wasn't right, but the momentum of the moment pushed those doubts aside. "Let's just talk to him first," she suggested, but Wilson was already reaching for his radio to call for backup. Inside McDonald's, the peaceful evening atmosphere continued. The chess players contemplated their next moves, students tapped away at their laptops, and families enjoyed their meals. Nobody noticed the two officers approaching the entrance, their faces set with determination. The security cameras kept recording, capturing every second of what would soon become a viral video and a wake-up call for the entire department. Alex stood at the counter, reaching for his order, completely unaware of what was about to happen. The receipt in his hand showed the time, 7:42 p.m. In less than 5 minutes, this ordinary evening would transform into a story that would shake the community and force everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about assumptions, communication, and the importance of looking beyond first impressions. The door chimed as the officers entered, mixing with the restaurant's background music and the soft conversations of customers. Outside, the sun had fully set, casting the parking lot in shadows broken only by street lights and the neon signs of nearby businesses. The evening news continued to play silently on the TV, ironically showing a story about community relations, a topic that was about to become painfully relevant to everyone in the restaurant. The peaceful evening atmosphere at McDonald's shattered in an instant. Alex had just picked up his tray when he heard a stern voice behind him. "Police? Don't move." The commanding tone made him freeze, his food tray trembling slightly in his hands. The restaurant fell silent, the usual background chatter dying away as all eyes turned toward the entrance. Officer Wilson moved forward quickly, while Officer Rodriguez hung back, her expression showing the first hints of doubt. Alex slowly turned around, confusion written across his face. Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The chess players by the window had stopped their game, pieces frozen mid-move. "Put the tray down and keep your hands where we can see them," Wilson ordered. Alex carefully placed his dinner on the nearest table, movements slow and deliberate. His mind raced through every interaction he'd had that day: basketball practice, helping a freshman with math homework, chatting with Mr. Mike at the counter. Nothing made sense. "Listen, I think there's been a mistake," Alex said calmly, reaching for his student ID in his back pocket. "I'm just getting dinner after practice." Wilson tensed at the movement. "Hands up. Don't reach for anything." The officer's voice echoed through the now silent restaurant. Mrs. Chen stood up from her corner table, her daughter clutching her arm. "Officers, this is Alex. He's here almost every evening after basketball practice. He's a good kid." Other customers began murmuring in agreement, but the officers seemed locked in their initial assessment of the situation. Mike, the elderly cashier, stepped out from behind the counter. "There must be some misunderstanding. Alex has been coming here for years. We know him well." His voice carried the weight of experience and certainty, but the momentum of the situation had already taken over. Jenny, the news server, had instinctively pulled out her phone and started recording, joining several other customers who sensed the wrongness of what was unfolding. The restaurant's security cameras continued their silent vigil, capturing every moment from multiple angles. "We received a report of a disturbance at Riley's Burger Shop," Rodriguez explained, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "Someone matching your description." Alex's eyes widened in recognition. "Riley's?" "I haven't been anywhere near Riley's. I came straight here from practice at Richmond High. You can call Coach Thompson, he'll tell you." But before he could finish, Wilson moved forward, reaching for his handcuffs. The metal clinked ominously in the quiet restaurant. Alex remained still, his hands raised, his voice remarkably composed for a teenager facing such an overwhelming situation. "Please just check my ID. Call my parents. Anyone here can tell you who I am." The elderly men who had been playing chess stood up slowly. One of them, Mr. Parker, a retired teacher, spoke up. "I've watched this young man grow up in this neighborhood. He tutors kids at the library on weekends. You're making a terrible mistake." Rodriguez glanced at her partner, then at the crowd of witnesses, their phones recording everything. The weight of dozens of eyes bore down on them. Through the windows, more people had gathered, drawn by the commotion. The local news van, coincidentally passing by, had already pulled into the parking lot. Time seemed to slow down as Alex stood there, his dinner getting cold on the table beside him, his gym bag still slung over one shoulder. The acceptance letter from State University felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket, a reminder of everything he'd worked for, everything that could be jeopardized by this moment. The restaurant's overhead lights cast harsh shadows across the scene, highlighting the tension in everyone's faces. Outside, the evening traffic continued as usual, drivers unaware they were passing by a moment that would soon make headlines across the country. The TV in the corner had switched to local news, creating an eerily prophetic backdrop to the unfolding drama. This was more than just a case of mistaken identity. It was a moment that would force an entire community to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice, power, and the importance of looking beyond first impressions. The next few minutes would change lives, spark important conversations, and ultimately lead to meaningful changes in police procedures and community relations. Mystery unleashed. What the hunter found beside the tree. By midnight, the video had already spread across social media like wildfire. Jenny's recording, along with clips from several other customers, showed the incident from multiple angles. The McDonald's security footage, released by the restaurant owner in support of Alex, provided an even clearer picture of what had happened. People who had never set foot in their small town were sharing the videos, demanding answers and action. The next morning, Richmond High School buzzed with a different kind of energy. Students gathered in small groups in the hallways, their usual chatter about homework and sports replaced by heated discussions about what had happened to their classmate. Alex's teammates from the basketball team wore their jerseys to school in solidarity, a silent statement that spoke volumes. "We're not letting this slide," announced Coach Thompson during morning practice. His voice, usually booming across the gym during drills, was quiet but firm. "Alex is one of our best, not just on the court, but as a person. We're standing with him." The team huddled together, many of them having barely slept after spending the night messaging back and forth, checking on Alex and planning their response. By lunchtime, students had organized a peaceful gathering outside the police station. They came prepared with handmade signs, but more importantly, with stories. One by one, they stepped forward to share their experiences with Alex. How he'd helped them with math homework, stayed late after practice to help freshmen improve their game, or volunteered at the local food bank every weekend. Mrs. Chen arrived at the gathering with trays of water bottles and snacks for the students. Her daughter had spent the evening making drawings of Alex, helping her with her homework at McDonald's, images that would later appear in the local newspaper. Mr. Parker, the chess player from McDonald's, joined the crowd, bringing with him decades of perspective on the community's history and the importance of this moment. The local news crews arrived to cover the gathering, but they found something different from the angry protests they might have expected. Instead, they witnessed a community coming together with purpose and dignity. Students shared their video testimonials, teachers spoke about Alex's character, and even the McDonald's staff took their breaks to join the gathering. Principal Richards addressed the media, her voice steady but emotional. "Alex represents the very best of our school and our community. He maintains a 3.9 GPA while serving as team captain, tutoring younger students, and working part-time to help his family. This incident reflects a larger issue that we must address, but we'll do it the right way, together, peacefully, and with purpose." The local library, where Alex spent his weekends tutoring kids, became an unexpected hub for community organizing. Ms. Harper, the head librarian, opened the community room for meetings where people could share their thoughts and plan constructive actions. "Alex helped so many kids in this room," she said, gesturing to the study tables. "Now it's our turn to help him." Social media continued to amplify the story, but the real impact was happening on the ground. Local business owners put up signs supporting Alex. The auto repair shop where his father worked was flooded with supportive customers, many sharing their own stories about Alex, helping them jump-start their cars in the school parking lot or carrying groceries for elderly neighbors. The basketball team's upcoming game transformed into something bigger than sports. Teams from other schools reached out, wanting to show their support. The opposing team's captain contacted Coach Thompson, suggesting both teams warm up in shirts supporting Alex. The gesture would later be recognized as a powerful moment of unity in high school sports. As evening approached, the gathering outside the police station had grown but remained peaceful. People brought chairs and coolers, turning it into something between a protest and a community gathering. Parents supervised younger children making posters, while teenagers organized social media campaigns. Local restaurants, including McDonald's, sent food for the protesters. The power of the community's response lay not in its volume but in its unity. Every story shared, every person who showed up added to a clear message. This wasn't just about one incident or one person, it was about standing together for what's right. The gathering continued as the sun set, with people holding up their phone lights in a powerful display of solidarity that would become one of the most shared images from the entire incident. The police department's internal affairs office buzzed with unusual activity early that morning. Chief Anderson had barely slept, spending most of the night reviewing the incident footage from multiple angles. The security cameras from McDonald's, cell phone videos from customers, and the officer's own body cameras painted a clear picture, one that made his stomach sink with each viewing. "Pull every piece of evidence we have," he instructed the investigation team. "I want the dispatch recordings, the original complaint from Riley's burger shop, everything." His office walls, usually decorated with commendations and certificates, now displayed timeline charts and printed screenshots from the incident. 2 floors down, Detective Lee sat across from the manager of Riley's burger shop, reviewing the original complaint that had started everything. "So you're saying the actual suspect was wearing a red jacket, not a team warm-up suit?" she asked, her pen pausing mid-note. The manager nodded, looking uncomfortable. "And he was much shorter, probably middle school age." Each detail further confirmed what they already knew. The description never should have led to Alex. Meanwhile, the department's training officer, Mr. Thompson, no relation to Alex, was conducting a thorough review of Officers Wilson and Rodriguez's recent performance records. "Look at this," he called to his colleague. 3 other incidents in the past month where they responded to vague descriptions without proper verification. The pattern was becoming clear, not of malice, but of rushed judgments and incomplete procedures. The 911 dispatch center provided their recordings, adding another crucial piece to the puzzle. The dispatcher's voice was clear, suspect described as young male in red jacket. Somewhere between that initial call and the officer's response, the description had shifted, twisted by assumptions and poor communication. Local civil rights organizations had sent observers to monitor the investigation, but they found something unexpected. Instead of the stonewalling they'd feared, they witnessed a department actively working to uncover its own failures. "They're doing what we've always asked," noted one observer, taking a hard look at themselves and their procedures. Back in the evidence room, technicians meticulously pieced together a minute-by-minute timeline. The wall-mounted screen showed synchronized footage from every available angle. "Look at the timestamp here," one technician pointed out. Alex had already been at McDonald's for 20 minutes when the incident at Riley's was reported. It was literally impossible for him to have been involved. The investigation expanded beyond just that evening. The team reviewed training procedures, communication protocols, and the department's community engagement policies. They interviewed every officer who had worked that shift, building a comprehensive picture of how assumptions and rushed decisions had cascaded into a serious incident. Community members continued to come forward with relevant information. Mrs. Chen provided her receipt from McDonald's, showing she had been there before Alex arrived. The chess players submitted written statements about their regular evening games and Alex's familiar presence. Each piece of evidence further highlighted how this incident could have been prevented with better procedures and communication. Chief Anderson spent hours in meetings with community leaders, sharing the investigation's findings with transparency. "We're not just looking at one incident," he explained, pointing to the evidence boards. "We're examining our entire approach to community policing. This isn't about making excuses, it's about making real changes." The investigation team worked late into each evening, their office lights visible from the street where community members still gathered peacefully. They weren't just building a case file, they were creating a blueprint for change. Every document, every interview, every piece of evidence would become part of new training materials, ensuring future officers would learn from this incident. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the evidence painted an undeniable picture of systemic issues that needed addressing. But it also revealed something else, a department willing to acknowledge its mistakes and work openly with the community to fix them. The final report would become required reading for police academies across the state, a case study in how bias and rushed judgments can lead to serious mistakes, and how transparency and accountability are crucial for maintaining community trust. The small conference room felt suffocating as Officer Wilson watched the incident footage for the 100th time. Each viewing revealed something new. A detail he'd missed, a moment where he could have made a different choice. The faces of the McDonald's customers, their shock and disappointment, were forever etched in his memory. "I kept telling myself we were following procedure," he said quietly to Dr. Adams, the department's counselor. "But watching it now, we didn't follow procedure at all. We jumped to conclusions. We saw what we expected to see, not what was actually there." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air as he stared at his hands, remembering how quickly they had reached for his handcuffs that night. Down the hall, Officer Rodriguez sat in a similar session, tears streaming down her face as she reviewed her own body camera footage. "I had doubts," she admitted. "I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't speak up. I didn't stop it." The revelation hit her hard. Sometimes staying silent was just as harmful as taking the wrong action. The diversity training session that week felt different from any they'd attended before. It wasn't just about watching videos or completing worksheets. Real community members shared their experiences, their fears, their hopes. An elderly gentleman spoke about teaching his grandchildren how to interact with police, his voice trembling with emotion. A high school teacher described the pain of seeing her students lose trust in authority figures. "I never thought I had any biases," Wilson confided to Rodriguez during their lunch break. "I thought being a good officer meant being tough, being decisive. But now I see being a good officer means being thoughtful, being willing to question yourself." The sandwich in front of him remained untouched as he struggled with these realizations. The turning point came when they received a letter from Alex's parents. It wasn't angry or accusatory. Instead, it expressed hope that something positive could come from this incident. "We want our son to grow up in a community where everyone feels safe," the letter read, "including those who wear the badge." Those words sparked something in both officers, a determination to be part of the solution. Their first community meeting was the hardest. Walking into that room, facing the people they had disappointed, took more courage than any police action they'd ever undertaken. Officer Wilson's voice shook as he stood up to speak. "We made mistakes that night," he began. "Serious mistakes that could have had terrible consequences. We can't change what happened, but we can learn from it and work to make sure it never happens again." Rodriguez shared her own revelation. "We forgot the most basic part of our job, to protect and serve everyone in our community. We let assumptions and fear override our training and our humanity." The room fell silent, absorbing the rawness of her honesty. The hardest moment was yet to come, meeting with Alex and his family. Both officers had requested this meeting, knowing they needed to take responsibility face to face. The department's conference room felt too formal, so they met at a local community center instead. Alex's presence carried a dignity that made both officers realize just how wrong their initial judgments had been. "I want to understand," Alex said, his voice steady. "I want to know what you saw when you looked at me that night." His question cut straight to the heart of the matter, forcing both officers to confront their unconscious biases head-on. The conversation that followed lasted hours. They talked about assumptions, about fear, about the weight of the badge, and the responsibility it carried. Alex shared his own experiences, helping the officers understand perspectives they had never truly considered before. As the days passed, both officers threw themselves into learning and change. They requested additional training, not just in procedures but in community relations and cultural understanding. They volunteered for community outreach programs, determined to rebuild trust one interaction at a time. Their experiences became part of the department's training program, not as a story of shame, but as a lesson in growth and accountability. 6 months after the incident at McDonald's, the police department's community room looked very different. The walls, once bare except for official notices, now displayed photographs of community events and youth programs. The biggest photo showed Alex standing with Chief Anderson, cutting a ribbon to open the new Youth Advisory Council. "This council isn't just about talking," Alex explained to a group of younger students. "It's about building bridges, making real changes." The council met twice a month, bringing together teens from every neighborhood to discuss their experiences and ideas with police leadership. Officers Wilson and Rodriguez regularly attended, not as authority figures, but as active listeners and learners. The department's training program had undergone a complete overhaul. New officers now spent time in community settings before ever putting on a uniform. They worked at local youth centers, attended neighborhood meetings, and learned the stories of the people they would serve. "We're not just training officers," Chief Anderson explained to a visiting police academy director. "We're building community guardians." At Richmond High School, the impact rippled through the halls. The incident had sparked difficult but necessary conversations about bias and justice. Coach Thompson incorporated these discussions into team meetings, helping his players understand their rights while also building positive relationships with local law enforcement. "Basketball is about more than scoring points," he'd tell them. "It's about building character and standing up for what's right." The McDonald's where everything started had become an unexpected symbol of community healing. The restaurant hosted monthly coffee with cop sessions, where residents could talk informally with officers over breakfast. Mr. Mike, the elderly cashier, would often share the story with new customers, not as a tale of conflict, but as an example of how a community could come together and create positive change. Officer Wilson's transformation was particularly notable. He'd become a regular speaker at police training sessions across the state, sharing his experience with unflinching honesty. "That night changed everything for me," he would tell the recruits. "It taught me that being a good officer isn't about being tough or quick to act. It's about being human, about seeing the humanity in others." The department's new verification protocols, dubbed the Second Look policy, had become a model for other cities. Before approaching any suspect, officers were required to cross-reference descriptions, communicate clearly with dispatch, and consider alternative explanations. "It takes a few extra minutes," Officer Rodriguez would explain during training sessions, "but those minutes can prevent life-changing mistakes." Alex's story had found its way into police academy textbooks, not just locally but across the country. But the real change wasn't in the written policies or training manuals, it was in the daily interactions between officers and community members. The fear and tension that had once characterized these encounters was slowly being replaced by understanding and respect. 1 year after the incident, Alex stood at a podium in the city council chambers, addressing a packed room. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had turned a painful experience into purposeful action. "What happened to me that night was wrong," he said, "but what happened afterward shows how a community can turn a moment of injustice into a movement for change." The Youth Advisory Council had expanded to include subcommittees focused on education, employment, and community safety. Young people who had never imagined working with law enforcement were now leading initiatives to improve police-community relations. Their latest project, a series of workshops called Walk in My Shoes, had officers and teens switching perspectives through role-playing exercises and honest discussions. The changes weren't perfect. Everyone knew there was still work to be done. But the foundation had been laid for something sustainable. The incident that could have torn the community apart had instead become a catalyst for bringing people together, for turning hurt into healing, misunderstanding into growth. As the sun set on another community meeting, Alex watched Officers Wilson and Rodriguez chatting with a group of middle school students. The kids were showing them basketball moves, laughing as the officers attempted to copy them. It was a simple moment, but one that would have seemed impossible a year ago. This, Alex realized, was what real change looked like, not just in policies and procedures, but in the small human moments that build trust and understanding, one interaction at a time.